Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Monday, June 22nd. So I posted a whole video on my Apocalypse Now channel, which I'm going to take down, and this, and I'm going to put it back up with this voiceover because I had an attack of this thing, the tachycardia thing, and the techniques that I talked about, the Valsalva technique, the Valsalva method, and this, putting the water putting my face in the water worked to some extent, and I'll elaborate on that in a second here. So I, my wife found this thing, this thing where you stick your face in cold water, and it really, wasn't having an attack, but I did it, and I felt amazing all yesterday. I didn't have any irregular heartbeats the day after, and I thought it was a great thing, and and I think it is to whatever extent. And there was these other things that I've learned since having these tachycardia incidents, which I describe in the video. So let me just go backwards a little bit. So when my wife and I first got COVID, we got COVID in 2020 in March when it was just coming out. It was called coronavirus back then. We got the original one, and we'd wake up gasping for breath. We had trouble breathing. It sucked. And my wife had for a while where she would get like upset, and she would end up having a little trouble breathing, almost like some asthmatic type of reaction. And I after I had COVID one, I was just devastated. Like I was, I was pre-diabetic. I went and got blood tests. There's this holistic chiropractor that does a lot of and uses allopathic methods of blood tests for diagnosis. Allopathic medicine strong suit is diagnosis through scientific data, often symptomatic diagnosis because of it being for profit. But it can be used to, if you use that information that you can get from modern science, you can find out a lot of things that could help address these issues, right? And this guy, he started me on various supplements, and there was things that they do there. They had acupuncture. They have these other, they have a whole system that you go through. And so, I felt kind of, it helped me. It like helped me rebuild my body. But then I got coronavirus. Omicron. And and I'm socially isolated. Like I've been social distancing like for years before COVID. I work at home. I only go out once or twice a week. So it was weird that I got COVID. There was a guy who was building our barn, and he stopped by, and his wife was a nurse, and she had gotten corona in March, and I think I got it from him because he came back and said this thing. It was like the one person I interacted with. I got it first. My wife is, more active, and we had, other people in our, in our living situation who are out, my kids and things like this, that were out more in the world or whatever. But I was the first one to get it, so it was weird. Like, why would I be the first when I only talk to like two people a month? Like so. But then I got Omicron, and that was weird. And then after that, the irregular heartbeat started. Like I started having, where it would be like it would last 10 seconds or so, or 15 seconds, and then it was infrequent. And for the most part, that was it. Like that was, I got sick two more times Omicron, and the last one wasn't bad at all, right? But what I realized was they released a biological weapon. And I say they did it on purpose. I can't prove that, but I know they did because why isn't anybody being consequenced, right? If China did this by accident and America was involved, if American labs and gain of function research from Fuji, why aren't any of these people suffering? Why are they being blamed, right? Why isn't other countries suing them for the economic toll and the physical health toll that took on all these countries of the world who had nothing to do with this? Why did everyone just knuckle under? Why isn't there accusations? Why aren't people bringing shit up at the UN? You had this global event affected everybody on Earth one way or another, even if you didn't get it. And then of course the effects of the vaccine and all these things, and that you had all of a sudden young people dropping like flies, heart issues, turbo cancer, all the things that went. Some of it with vaccine, some of it with the COVID, but you had all these things that were developing now. Heart issues and cancer, the two big ones, two biggest killers where now, there's more people suffering from those conditions, right? And yet, no blame, nobody suffered, there's no consequences to the lab, or, there's still these things about pangolin and bats floating around, right? And so, there was all these things. But, because they released a biological weapon, they, lost control of it as soon as it hit the human population because it morphed into various forms, right? So I had the first one. Then they had this thing that they called Omicron, and I don't even know what they called the last one if they had a name for it. And each time I had it, it was significantly different. The first one was the worst because I would wake up in the middle of the night. My wife had similar symptoms. I'd feel fine. I'd feel better, like I didn't feel sick at all. And then I'd go to bed and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I was gasping for breath, right? And one of the things I did is we had a router in our room, which we turned off every night, but I took the router and I put it on the other side of the wall. Even though, it can penetrate the wall, it seemed to, when I did it, I just breathed a sigh of relief. Like I knew, oh, this is going to help. Like this will make things better. I drilled a hole in the wall, I ran the cable through it, I put the router on the other side of the doorway. It's still close to the room, but, I felt Wi-Fi was certainly a part of this. And they had just rolled out 5G. And of course, 5G's millimeter waves and 4G was microwaves. And so it's like, what the fuck are these things doing to people? They certainly are doing things, and it's a part of the, have the whispers of the brighter world spiritual prophecies, these channel prophecies. And this talked about over and over again about electromagnetic pollution and its effects on the physical body and the spiritual body. And that, and you can't live without it now. Like people, imagine if you said to people, yeah, we gotta get rid of Wi-Fi, it's fucking hurting you. Imagine the reaction. You think people would be like, oh, well, it's great, let's get rid of it, I want to feel healthy? Fuck no, right? So, I work with Wi-Fi quite a bit, right? I do make videos and this content and all these things. So, I mean, it's a thing that we all depend on in one way or another for information and all these things. And it ain't going away. And they added these things into the human condition without testing them. Of course they tested them. They knew what they were going to do. But again, like just with the virus, it starts to mutate and it starts to have other effects. And since their goal isn't to cure you of these things, they wouldn't release toxic things, toxic Wi-Fi, and toxic fucking, a virus of biological weapon. They wouldn't release it into the public because they want you to feel good. They're reducing the population, and there's, whatever. But it's going to, like with anything else, they can't predict how it's going to go. They put it out there, and the internet has a life of its own. The way that people interact with the biological weapon, and the way that people interact with the electromagnetic pollution weapon, the Wi-Fi and the disease, and all of a sudden it morphs into something else. It mutates, and the people mutate, and the disease mutates and affects you. And then, of course, they introduced the vaccine, which is even more so. And so now you're tampering with people's fucking genetics and DNA and all this stuff. So, and then it starts to have a life of its own. And they can't predict it or control it. They can't predict how, like AI, people interacting with the AI, how it changes people, and how the people interact with the AI and how it changes the AI. They don't know. They can't control it. It takes on a life of its own. We've seen all this. So, there's all of those things that are wrapped up into what's going on now in the modern world, and it's affecting people. And so I knew I was going to do allopathic medicine, which caused the fucking problem, because allopathic medicine, for the most part, I've had some good interactions with, I always just make a distinction between healers and doctors. A doctor can be a money profiteering piece of shit who's actually, a non-healer, and oftentimes you interact with mainstream medical or even some alternative medical people, many of them as well, because they're scammers or they're just suck or whatever it is, and they make things worse, right? Do no harm. The reason that they have do no harm, which is a negative suggestion, you shouldn't say do no harm. It should be, only do good, like only help. But we all know that harm is done by the medical profession. I mean, most of us know this. And so when you go to doctors or chiropractors or anybody, like sometimes they help, and it can be the same person, and sometimes they could be a healer, and sometimes they make things worse, right? because they don't really understand your specific symptoms in your specific body, or the human body and the human spirit and all the ways that interacts, right? There's this idea of samskaras, in the Sajmark method of meditation I do, there are these samskaras. And so, my wife and I had discovered all this stuff on COVID that was helpful. We had, we not in terms of how we got through the COVID itself and how we dealt with the after effects. And, I went and got this extensive blood work after I had COVID for the first time. I went to this holistic chiropractor, where they have all these different modalities. And it was helpful, but it wasn't 100% great. And but it taught me, it gave me a certain amount of tools. I already knew about herbal, tinctures and herbal medicines and supplements, which I hadn't been taking anything. Up until that point, I don't, my mom gave me vitamins when I was a kid. She gave me these giant fucking horse pills that used to get caught in my throat. And I kept on telling her I can't swallow them. She just kept on giving to me. So we had these radiators, and I just started hiding them behind the radiator. There must have been fucking 200 behind there. Or whatever. Like, I don't know if they eventually found, we never had a conversation about it, but, I couldn't, I was too young to take these big giant pills. And, and as I got older, like I just had a resistance to medicine. My mom was kind of a hypochondriac, and I just would try to sleep it off. If I got sick or whatever, if it was really bad, I'd go get antibiotics or something. But, I've had good health my whole life with, some caveats like migraines and things, but nothing serious. Nothing, like cancer or any of the big things. I'm now 62, but now my body was devastated. I got, some kind of disease when I was in India, like went through this, really stressful time period. And my body was just ravaged. I'd put on a bunch of weight. I'd always was very, I was, when I was younger, when I was trying to put on weight as an athlete, I was trying to bulk up. I had trouble. Like I had trouble retaining body mass. I would get stronger from lifting weights, but power eating, but I wasn't putting on weight. And then, I had a few times where I gained weight, in my 30s, but nothing until my 50s where I put on a substantial amount of weight, had a lot of cortisol, went through a lot of family stress and, my daughter's suicide and a really shitty divorce, and then the collapse of my spiritual organization, and then moving back and forth from India, and then just my kids all, going their own way. And that was, difficult, and they're difficult, where kids go out into the world and on their own. And it's just, my family fell apart and all these things, right? But anyways, let's get back to it here. So my wife and I discovered all these things about COVID, and I was hesitant to share it because back when it was coronavirus, they were making, like, there was a rap song, and they're in the rap song they were treating people with corona like lepers, right? Like there was just this fear and paranoia and all this stuff, and I didn't really want to talk about having it. But we knew things like we knew things like how to deal with what we learned about COVID, because if you don't trust the medical system, and again, I'm not giving medical advice here because this is the most important thing, because everybody's body is specific. Like we're all experiment subjects of Wi-Fi, of AI, right? Where there's an experiment of introducing something to the human condition more than anything else, right? Like, so there's an experiment of, let's introduce the wheel to cavemen or something, right? What happens when you give alcohol to native peoples? Or smallpox, blankets with smallpox to Native Americans. Like, that's biological warfare. And what happens? Like, what happens to that population? Like, you can trace the interaction of Native American peoples, Aboriginal peoples around the world, and when they were interacting with white people technology, for example, when they're given these things, like whatever tools they had, they're given advanced tools. Like there's an experiment of carrying around a cell phone. There's one time my family and I went to stay at this house. This woman was did the meditation system. She was part of the organization that, my family and I were in at the time. And her husband she was Indian and her husband was white. And he was, he created video games. So he was on tech all the time. And he was talking to me, and, he was not, was knowledgeable. He was just kind of a nerdy tech guy, and he wasn't knowledgeable alternative medicine. But he went to some guy like an acupuncturist or something. The guy put a cup on him in some part of his body and just started to weep. And the guy said to him, this guy was, probably a, real healer, and said to him, it's you're suffering from all your work that you're doing on the computer all the time. So this is 15 years ago. This is 2000 and, probably 2000 and maybe 12. So, what is that, 13 years ago? Something like that, 13 years, for whatever. And this guy's telling me that the guy says to him, like Steve Jobs, he had, I guess, pancreatic cancer because he had his cell phone right there, right? So people now know this. Like people who work with cell phones, they often don't give their kids to it because they know it's fucking what it does to them, right? Their kids don't have the technology that they are selling to everybody else. And so, you have these effects that are happening because they're introducing things to the human system, the human population. And then there's going to be ways it affects certain groups and certain people more than others. There's physiological effects, there's psychological effects, and this is what's happening. And so if the mainstream media isn't in the mainstream medical system and the media and everybody else isn't going to tell you the truth about what they're doing, like, why they're doing it, why they're introducing these things, what the end goal was, what they found when they, because they did experiments. You can't just start releasing Wi-Fi into the atmosphere, even though it's just electromagnetic, invisible, and think that, hey, it's all going to work out, right? It's just going to fucking work out. You can't, they have to know what they're doing. There has to be, the effects on the environment, the effects on people, the effects on birds and bees and all that shit. Because it has an effect. Like you have all these animals that have ways of navigating and different things, and they're getting all fucked up because of the Wi-Fi. Like they had to know that was going to happen, right? They just didn't invent the stuff and not think, oh, wow, if we release microwaves into everybody's house, low doses into the atmosphere, smart meters into your home, and there's going to be a ping of microwave every 23 seconds or whatever it is, and communicating with other devices and all this different stuff, gamma waves and there's all these waves, everything Bluetooth, they all use different, things. That isn't going to have an effect on people and the environment. We're changing the fabric of the world, and we're going to have these satellites going around the world, and they're all going to, how's that going to affect everybody and everything? So, if that's the case, then everyone and the people who are in charge of your medical system, and again, I'm not fucking telling you what to do or not to do. Like, this is the point of this whole introduction. Then you have to figure it out yourself. So you have to go use the internet and find out what's going on. Like, if the medical community is like trying to kill you, if that's a possibility. If they're trying to do population reduction, then, go into them. It's going to help. They're not wanting to help you, right? I mean, that's how I view it. You don't have to view it that way. That's the way I see it, right? So that, so you have to figure it out for yourself. You have to kind of gather information and become a research. I've talked about in a video called Read the Ingredients, and how once you realize that this mainstream system doesn't have your best interest at heart, they're putting poisons into your food. They're putting carcinogens, things that cause cancer, into your food, and into all kinds of other things. Think about if you look at the long list of carcinogens. And then the other thing is heart disease. The two main killers, there's heart disease and cancer. And people are walking around in Walmart and fucking, grocery stores with a basket full of cancer and heart disease. Like they have ingredients, they have fucking foods that they're going to consume that are going to cause those things. And then all the other stuff, right? So, you spend all this time reading the ingredients, which is exhausting. And I'm not talking about just the physical things. You have to read the ingredients of the effects of pornography. You have to read the ingredients of the effects of video games and Wi-Fi and AI. And then, you see all these things. And people are changed. Their brain structure has changed. These kids who grew up on the internet, they have different ways of viewing the world. They've been fucked up by by being on the internet for so many hours, right? So all these things are, part of it. So, we have to, as individuals, go out for our own specific symptomatic physical health and mental health issues and psychological issues and things like this. Have to figure out like what we can do, like for ourselves, to cope with this fucking toxic world we've created, right? And so, I shared the information, and I got attacked by all kinds of dumb fucks out there who were saying, that I was a shill because COVID wasn't real. And I couldn't believe that was the outcome, even though I should have known it would be, because I've been on the internet for a long time, and there's so many dumb fucks in the truth community and all these people who think they know. And like I'm, trying to be a helper. And then YouTube blocked all my videos, gave me community guideline strikes for saying anything that wasn't mainstream medical stuff. They was calling it medical disinformation. Remember that shit? You couldn't talk about it at all. And so, I'm like, Jesus Christ, like this is how bad everything is. And so when I developed this heart condition, it took a while before I found out about the Valsalva method, which I'll get into in the video. You guys have already seen the video. Again, what I'm going to do is make this an introduction to the video I've already made. And so the person said, well, I thought you probably already heard about this, but if you haven't, there's a thing called the Valsalva method, which is you put pressure on the heart area. And I talk about this later in the video. I'm not going to explain it here. And then my wife found this other thing. And I wanted to share that information, but with the idea is that I wish I had known about these things and could have tried them when I had this developed condition. So I first got an irregular heartbeat from COVID, like a post-COVID thing. And it was infrequent and it wasn't really bad. But the other part is when I would dip my head, and this was after I had COVID the first time, and then it comes back and forth. Sometimes I'm fine, but when I bend over, I get dizzy and, there's blood pressure issue, whatever it might be. And so, when you have heart issues, because your heart is like, if your heart's glitching out, that's fucking a big concern. And given, like, I had these videos they used to post on Apocalypse Now channel, Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies, but it was about how everyone, it was kind of getting around talking about COVID. It was like almost like I had to do it in code. I wouldn't say specifically the things because of the restrictions on YouTube. But, there's this, there's a YouTube, or there's an Instagram page and a Facebook page called Died Suddenly, where they post all the people who just died suddenly. This was a new thing. Young people would just, play sports, go home and relax, and boom, they would have a fucking cardiac arrest. They're starting putting defibrillators in schools, remember? And no one gives a shit about that now. But like, that's all right. That became normalized. They just normalized these things. And so, in all that, we have our specific bodily needs. And the Valsalva method and this new thing that my wife found with the sticking your face in cold water, it works for some people but not others. But if you're having a tachycardia incident, these are things that they will tell you to do. I mean, the Valsalva, pretty much everybody knows about, in mainstream medical, but maybe they don't. Maybe some hospitals don't even know about that, right? Because they don't know shit. Like, there's so many things that there's no solution for. Chronic illnesses where they can give you medications that address the symptoms, but maybe that causes other symptoms, other side effects. And so, like, there's no cures out there. Like, people have, you get something and it either goes away on its own or it morphs into some other problem. But, you never get rid of it. You just suffer, some kind of, now you have a chronic disease and you have some kind of issue. And so, I've had that with migraines, right? And people have that. My migraines have morphed over the years, changed. And, to where, I kind of have a handle on them. And I only have a few, maybe one or two a year that are debilitating where I just can't function. But usually it's like towards the end of the day and it kicks in. I go to sleep and maybe I have a, the remnants of a migraine and I can still do a little bit of work the next day. And I just sort of eke through. And maybe if it lasts 3 days, it's a, real bad one. But, but it's not nearly as bad as the first day. And then it just goes away and I feel real great afterwards because my serotonin level kicks into a higher thing. But the migraines and my irregular heartbeat and now this tachycardia are all, to me, connected. They all seem to, there's certain things that have happened. So, I had this situation last night and I just made this video weirdly about sharing this information. And so this is why I'm doing this introduction, because I now have more experience with it. And I'm not, I'm going to put the whole video in on my Apocalypse Now channel, the one that I put up yesterday after this. So I'm going to take it, the one I have down, and the one that's up there down. And this idea of sharing information, but also a personal perspective. Like, you can go and use allopathic medicine, you can go and try to find alternative medical people. But in that, you're ultimately going to have to learn things yourself. And these are all the things I've learned thus far. Like I said, there's a person who wrote me a comment, and as sort of a, like as an extra thing, said, I don't know if you've heard about the Valsalva method. You probably have. And I'm like, no, what the fuck is that, right? So, like that was, I was 2 months into it, and either people didn't know, the people who did know about the Valsalva method didn't decide to share it with me in the comment section, or maybe they did and I didn't read there could be any number of things. The various medical people I'd interact with. And, it took me 2 months to find that. And then my wife found this thing that I'm going to, again, I'm posting that whole video after here. I don't want to, say these things twice. But, so I had this real event last night. And up to that point, when my heart would start to flutter and it felt like it might go into this tachycardia thing, which I don't believe has very little to do with the heart. It has to do with the electromagnetic aspect of my system, and it's very similar. It comes like, it's to me like a migraine that now involves my heart. It's part of my issues with my since I was 14 years old and I got my first migraine. My lifelong battle with those migraines, or whatever you want to call it, battle or not. This condition that I have, and dealing with it. It's a glitching out of the electromagnetic system in some way. If the body glitches out. And so I, I started to have this heart fluttering, and I did the Valsalva technique, and it didn't seem to stop it. And up to that point, the last, I don't know, a month or so, the Valsalva technique has been working great. And so it didn't seem to stop it. And weirdly enough, I noticed my stomach was swollen, which is always a factor. My gut has been swelling since COVID with no real explanation. The first time I had COVID, my gut was swelling. It affected my ability to breathe. Like, it was swelling so much. Even if I hadn't eaten anything, and, it wasn't like I had specific reaction to foods. It would happen weirdly. And also, it would always get worse when it was raining or about to rain, and there'd be a change in barometric pressure. So there was things out in the environment, things in my own body, things that were going on that would, contribute to this glitch out, right? So, so it started to, like, I did the Valsalva technique again. And then I went and filled the water and dunked my face in the water. And I could explain this all in this video coming up, like these techniques. And, and it would seem to reduce it and stop it for a short period of time. But my heart, the first time I had this stuff, my heart would race to 250 beats. So these techniques were working. But I would, whenever I sat down, it would start up again. And it's something weird about sitting down or laying down. Like, it never happens when I'm standing up. So that's another, it's another factor, right? That I have to, you have to learn about your body. Like, if you're going to, battle these things or whatever it is, and you're going to, you don't have trust in the medical community. And I'm not, again, I'm not telling people to do one thing or another, because I don't know if there is some things that'll work for you that don't work for me or whatever. See, it's very specific. That's the problem. Like, you're an experiment, and the way that these things interact with you, the environment you live in, the kind of, place you live in. Do you live by the ocean? Do you live in the mountains? What if you live at high altitude? And then our genetic differences and our spiritual differences and our samskaras and our, there's all these factors that it works with you individually. Like, these things are going to have, everyone's going to have an individual effect. COVID had a different effect on my wife than it did on me post-COVID. She had lingering symptoms, and I had lingering symptoms that weren't the same, right? Like, we all have our different reactions. So, if you are a person that can do your own research and, and learn to kind of figure out your own body and things, I wanted to provide the information that I've learned and give a place for other people to leave comments and say, this is what I know about it, and, articles that people can share. And, this would be a video, the one that's going to be on the Apocalypse Now channel, which I don't use as much. And there can be a lot of information devoted to that, right? Some people are going to react differently to cold water. And so, you have to figure out how these things affect your body. And then, like, you learn to, you're shocking your body when you sit in cold water, but you're also shocking your body when you sit and, take a hot shower or take a hot bath. Like, there's extreme temperatures. You bring your body up to extreme temperature or bringing it down to extreme temperature. People are like, oh, worried about cold baths, but then, they take hot baths all the time. That's normalized, but that affects your body. And what does it do when you're having one of these issues, right? Like, does it help? Does it hurt? So I was doing this, and I realized, last night, which the main issue that I have to deal with is, like, the symptom is the heart my heart tachycardia thing. Again, I explained how this chiropractor fucked it up. And, that was another do no harm kind of thing, because that came from a misuse of a Pro Adjuster 2 machine that was placed over my heart area, which should never have been done. And so I'm dealing with that because this fucking place, made it worse, right? Which created an effect. And they've done it with other people. This is something that they, the factory manufacturer said don't do it, and they did it. And it's, I was the first person to react this way, or at least, as far as they know, or as far as they're telling me. I mean, you think they would have stopped doing it if they knew that this was, not something you're not supposed to do, but who the fuck knows, right? Right. So this is what we're dealing with. And so, what I've learned about my own body and these things, I can reduce the heart rate thing, and it's not nearly as bad, and it doesn't last as long. So and I've prevented it. The last one I've had was like 6 weeks ago. So the first 2 episodes I had, my heart got up to 250 beats, and I felt like if I had a fourth one, I don't know if I was going to make it. It was exhausting, and it just crushes your will to live. I mean, these things are hard to get through. It's draining, and and you never know what's going to happen. Like I had to cancel a dental appointment because I didn't want to have one while I'm sitting in the dentist chair. It affects the way I drive and, what I'm going to do. What am I going to, like I was going to go shopping today. Am I going to do that? Because I don't want to have that happen while I'm driving, right? So it's a whole fucking thing, right? It's like, it really negatively affects you. And so that's, what I'm dealing with, and I'm sure many other people are dealing with. So, anything that can help, like anything that, people want to, investigate for themselves when they hear about it, it may work for you, it may not. Like it's all these things. Like that's why I'm putting these things out there. Not for people to, I'm not a doctor and I can't even fix myself, in this situation. Like I'm learning about how to deal with this condition myself. It's not I don't have the answers, but I'm better off than I was before. And the Valsalva technique definitely worked last night to whatever extent, but it took me, I was basically in the situation at the end where my heart rate was perfectly fine. I mean, the cold water thing, which I'm going to talk about, I'm going to put for those of you who watch the video, you know what I'm talking about. This is going to go on Pockets of the Future, and then the whole video I'm going to put up. The one I put up on Apocalypse Now, I'm going to take the other one down, like I said, and put this introduction in front of it, and put that one back up. Because, whatever. Because it's just, this information I think should be shared before that these techniques are given. Like everyone has to figure out, specifically what you need, what works with your body. And you can, or not, like just go to whatever doctors. I mean, people have their own, whatever. But those people who are looking for more information, I wanted to have a place where people could share information about, how you're dealing with Wi-Fi, people who are sensitive to Wi-Fi, which I am, how are you dealing with, irregular heartbeats post-COVID or post-vax. What are you doing to fix that? What are you doing? And what's the information out there that they're not telling you or not giving you? And it's overwhelming. Like people send me information all the time, and sometimes I can't even read the comment. It's too overwhelming what they're saying, and sometimes they're trying to get me to do their thing that I know wouldn't work for me. Like I just have to reject that because it's just it's allopathic medicine bullshit that I know isn't going to help me. Some diagnosis, like they're good at diagnosing things symptomatically, but they don't have any real solutions that are you're cured. You don't have this anymore. I had migraines and I took Imitrex, and it worked like twice, and then I started having side effects that made it worse, and I still got the headache. Right, so Imitrex is a migraine medication. So they have things that might work for a little bit, but then they cause a separate problem because it's for-profit medicine. They're making profit off of you having chronic illnesses that you have, that you are dependent. They're like drug dealers, literally and figuratively, that are, that provide you with medications that you now need to take for the rest of your life, and then you have to keep on adding to them because of the side effects of the other medications you're addicted to. And again, if that's your thing, that's your thing, right? Like I'm not giving advice of what to do or what not to do. It's the whole thing's fucked. This is where we're at right now because there's like all these things been introduced to the human system, and it affects people differently. Some people have more, are more sensitive to one thing or another, and we all develop some kind of symptoms, some kind of poor health and psychological depression and things and whatever it might be from these experiments that are being done on us, right? But now that I've had this instance, I know that these things are good. The water thing and the Valsalva technique and the other things that I'm doing to reduce cortisol. Like I did all these things, and they helped reduce the effects of this thing. But it wasn't until my gut stopped swelling, because it seems like when I sit down or I lay down, my heart just starts to race. And this happened during COVID. When I had it the first time, I didn't really identify it. I would lay down and I'd have a trouble breathing, or sometimes my heart would race, and it was like, what do you mean I can't sleep? Like that's how I get better. Like, I'm not going to be able to go to sleep. I'm not going to feel comfortable laying down if I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night gasping for air. I go to bed stressed out that I'm going to wake up and be in some kind of a crisis. Like, fuck is this thing, right? And so, this is what we're dealing with. And so, here are the new techniques that I have. And again, I'll do follow-up videos to this on Apocalypse Now, and I'll put the, whatever new information in my regular videos as I go through it. But, it's something where, each person has their own path and journey. And like, I just want, the information to be out there, but I don't know if things are going to work for you. I don't know if they're going to make you worse. It's just like everyone has to make their own decisions, because, unless you find a real healer out there, somebody who can really invest and like meditate and penetrate into your specific problem and come up with protocols and, help you, which would be great. And there might be, I'm sure there's people like that out there. I haven't found any personally, but, can really see your specific needs and, and just, because they have to come up with like a treatment plan for you that works for you, all these things. And otherwise we're just kind of throwing darts at a board and hoping that, we figure it out. Right. So without the training and without the, backing of a, medical model system. So anyways, that's what I have to offer today about this thing. It's just, again, this is for each person to figure out, as I, talk about this in the video I did yesterday, because, I didn't know how these things would work for me, and they didn't work as good as I hoped, but they did work. Like, they were effective in helping me, but, it wasn't the thing that I hoped it'd be, where it would be like, I just won't ever have one of these tachycardia events again, because I had one, and it was minimized. But, I still, it took me, the whole thing lasted about 15 minutes, the rapid heartbeat, with it stopping a few times. And then I just couldn't sit down for like 2 hours. Like, it was just, then we'd start coming back around, and it was a whole thing. And so, yeah, my heart didn't race as fast, and it didn't last as long. So that's, it did deal with it. But overall, there's this glitch out that I'm having. And, hopefully there's some way it either just goes away on its own, or, these things that, I don't know, like, it just, whatever. I don't know what to say about it, but I've had migraines now since I was 14 years old. I'm 60, whatever, whatever that is. So almost, is that 46 years? So, 47 years, I don't know what it is. So, like, it's just, and they've changed, and I've been able to deal with them, but they're there. Okay, so for those of you Epoxy of the Future, I'll start my, other video now, the rest of the, the whatever I'm making today. That's going up on Tuesday, June 23rd. And for those of you on Apocalypse Now, here's the video I posted yesterday, if you haven't seen it already. And this is all the information that I have. And again, people can leave helpful comments about, things that they know may or may not help people. Okay, so I got a bunch of Twitter stuff from yesterday, most of it kind of, I don't want to say it's all random. It's interconnected to other things I've been covering, but a lot of different subjects. And then I noticed I had 2 recommendations. This one appeared on my phone this morning. And then somebody sent me a personal recommendation about, I'll show you that in a moment, Don Lemons and Kamala Harris. So let's start off with those 2 things. There's no way he is dumb enough to believe that I'm making $800K a week on YouTube. Not even girl math could come up with those numbers that obtuse. These pastors lie, they breathe. And they lie like they breathe, and it's very reason why so many are exiting these fake churches. So that's the real Candace Owens. And here is this McCoy motherfucker. Is it Rob McCoy? But, like, this is...
Candace doesn't have any receipts, and it's a carnal Christian soap opera. And you're suckered into it, and she's making $800,000 a week. And you're attacking a widow. Wow.
Okay, a lot there. So she's not making $800,000 a week on 2 million views, right? So back when I got good ads, I got videos. I would make $3,000 on a video that got $1 million views. Now Candace Owens has more advertisers. You know, she has paid advertisers. So I don't know how much they give her per. You know, she gets whatever. I don't know how many views are legitimate, but on YouTube she gets, you know, between 1 and 2 million views. I haven't seen her channel in a while, and so she's getting the millions of views, and she has, you know, sponsors, and so they probably pay her per view. I don't know. You know, they have ways. You know, um, use the cheat code Candace or whatever the fuck they say. You know, that whole thing, and get an extra 10% off. I don't know how much she gets for every sale, right? So it's, you know, from YouTube ads, it would be, and she doesn't run YouTube ads, it would be like when my channel was not thought of as a piece of shit channel. I made 3,000. Like you see that comedian Kyle Doonigan, he showed videos where he had over 1 million views or hundreds of thousands of views, and he made like $10. So it really depends on the quality of ads YouTube runs, or what your sponsors are willing to pay, right? And they're not paying her fucking $800,000 for those. I mean, it is millions of, you know. I mean, a lot of the people are return viewers who have heard her talk about these things before, whatever her sponsors are. She has some kind of abortion sponsor, and I think she sells steaks and shit, you know. But so it's not that much money. Certainly not $800,000 a week. You know, it might be 40,000. It depends on, you know, just how much merch she sells. You know, for all the merch that Charlie Kirk sells and all these people, the numbers aren't that much. I mean, they're, you know, even with millions of views, like you're getting in front of people, but then, you know, how you monetize those views, and how responsive your people are to the monetization of those views. You know, it's not. She might make $1 million, you know, whatever it is, but it isn't 800,000 a week, right? That's like basically saying she's making $52 million a year. You know, it's like whatever it is, $40 million a year. She's not making $40 million a year off of those things. Like, it's just silly. You know, it's like it's not possible. Like, it's just made up shit, right?
On innuendo, supposition, vain speculation, and it's shameful when you should be caring for a widow.
The fucking widow stuff. You know, the thing about Erica Kirk, which we all know, is she's insincere. It's an act. It's not authentic. Like, nobody should think it's authentic. I don't know how anybody could think Erica Kirk's authentic. Like, I don't know how fucked you got to be inside to look at Erica Kirk. And this isn't about, I mean, it's about being a dumb fuck, but it is an IQ. Like, you can't see that she is fake. Like, it's fake. It's a really bad act. The constant crying, the victimization, the whole thing. And how it's, you know, like with somebody, like there's a character in the show where you see, you know, Everyone Loves Raymond, his mother was like this. You know, maybe, you know, borderline personality disorder or something, you know, some kind of personality disorder. You know, that's just one character out of many. You'll see, and the person uses, you know, a tragedy for their own personal, everybody look at me, it's all about me, right? It's all about me. You know, I talk about how my ex was, you know, I was literally talking about this person in the voiceover, you know, this guy that I said that, you know, he made video games, and his wife was an Ayurvedic person, and we went and stayed at their house. We were going from Virginia to Chicago, and we stayed at these people's house in Ohio somewhere, right? And there was an ashram in Ohio, and these people, this girl she learned about Ayurvedic medicine in New Mexico, and she used to come to us as, you know, as an abhyasi. She now is a preceptor. She was older. She had her own kid, and we stayed at her house, so we knew this you know, person pretty well. And I got a bad migraine, and I had to drive to Chicago the next day and then help us get on a plane. Almost all the work was falling on my shoulders, especially the driving, obviously. My ex couldn't drive. And I get a migraine. And the woman starts doing Ayurvedic stuff on it. and my ex, I start to feel better. I'm like, oh, this is actually working. Like, and then it's. And I mean, I got to get. We're leaving the fucking house. We got to get to drive, and my ex starts going, "Oh my god, I'm such an empath. I'm starting to feel the migraine." Like she was picking up on the migraine because I was being, and in our situation, my physical needs were never getting addressed. Right, my health needs, because my ex was constantly being sick and these things and making it all about herself. Right, and she's like, "I'm such an empath. Oh no, I'm sick," and then she needed to be treated, and all the attention went from me to her, and I started to get stressed out because like it's stressful as fuck and weird, and then my migraine gets worse. And so this is what I'm talking about, where people, find some way to be a victim and make it all about themselves. And you can see it when somebody does it on TV. I mean, you should be able to see. You don't empathize with that person. You see that person's being manipulative. And that's what Erica Kirk is. Like, everybody should see that. And if you can't see it, then God help you. Like, it's just the most obvious thing.
I don't understand it. She's going to go bankrupt. This next one with Charlie's chief of security, Brian, she's done. But here's the thing.
Okay, so first he goes from saying Candace Owens is making $800,000 a year, a week. And then he's going, how much do you think this guy Brian Harpool, who is, I mean, this comes back to Candace Owens' bullshit thing with, let me show that. I'll show the thing with Mitch Snow because it's one of my favorite memes. I'll remind myself at the end of this. But she brought this guy Mitch Snow in, who was a fucked up guy with a fucked up history, and totally not, somebody who was, like a valid witness. And he said he saw Brian Harpool at this Fort Huachuca and in the area the day before he saw Erica Kirk, like right before Charlie's death, and that they were planning some operation. And Candace Owens ran with it, and it was told like irresponsible journalism at best. And so he's talking about that lawsuit. But if Candace Owens is making $800,000 a week, what do you think the guy's going to get? $1 billion settlement? This isn't that fucking kind of thing. Like, even if he gets $10 million, she could easily pay for it. So this guy's, like he's contradicting himself. She's not going to go bankrupt. Like, she'd still be able to do that. Why isn't Erica suing her? Like Candace Owens said, because they asked Erica where she got her drugs from, or her attorneys did. And Erica went, why is she and decided to withdraw her lawsuit? That's what that Candace says, and she can't be trusted either. But this is how fucked up this thing is.
Ended the Salem witch trials in 1692 in America. And it was a minister who ended them. His name was Increase Mather.
Don't try to fucking whitewash the Salem witch trials, which is 100% about fucked up Christianity. The Salem witch trials and the other witch trials, they were also fucked up in a way, like they would say, if you float, you're guilty. If you drowned, you're innocent. Like, well, we drowned another innocent one. I mean, like, like they have these ways. I mean, just completely fucked up. And it was also about, this was about the medical allopathic model coming in. A lot of the women who were persecuted were herbalists and, healers and things, midwives. I mean, this whole thing. But anyways, the Christians were horrible about not just the witch trials, but all these things. The way they treated other cultures. Don't pretend Christians fucking did anything good. There have been good Christians, but Christians have a fucking long list of torturing, killing, genociding people. These fucking ministries, beating children. I mean, all the stuff. The stuff they did to the Native American children, all the stuff they did in Canada, in America. I mean, it's just long history. So don't, like, pretend the church was good at any of these things, right? Any of these churches. Like, the Catholic Church, the Christian religion, was responsible for so much pain and suffering across the globe. Getting rid of, Aboriginal cultures and, I mean, the Irish and the Scottish and, forcing the kids to stop speaking their native language. And, I mean, just horrific crimes, war crimes, right? Don't fucking pretend that the Salem witch trials were brought back, were destroyed by Christians. And don't compare Erica Kirk. I mean, she's certainly a witch, but a real one, like not a fake one.
And they had murdered 19 people. And you know why they did it? They had spectral evidence. You know what spectral evidence is? I had a dream. Charlie spoke to me. Sound familiar? Hello? Some of you don't want to nod because you've been watching that garbage. I had a dream. Spectral evidence was outlawed because the scripture said 2 or 3 witnesses. 2 or 3 witnesses.
You're not counting Mitch Snow? All right, so you see how fucked up this is and how fucked up Candid is. I mean, this whole thing's still going on. But the evidence is Erica Kirk is fucking lying, or she's acting like she's insincere. And all the shit that she did is weird. And nobody, a majority of people see it. It's pretty obvious. I mean, I can't believe they're not doing that on purpose. Or she just sucks. And they're running with it. But either way, come on. All right, so let me show you the Mitch Snow meme here.
But then I said to myself, this man has lived through so much. You know what I mean? This man has lived through so much.
My wife neglects us, ignores us, and then screams at us on Saturday morning.
And I would be turning my back on this, really a hero.
I didn't give you an asshole answer. I gave you a smartass answer. It's Saturday morning, and it's okay to be a smartass.
For discovering the cartels.
I have no idea where the keys are. Would love to know.
Who's lived through so much and has been treated like the government. And then I struggled with my own soul going, I'm turning my back on him because I'm afraid.
Touch that Mustang. Stop it!
Touched it.
Of backlash for allowing him to tell the truth.
You want to video record shit?
And my soul was in conflict. And I decided that, you know what, this is not my platform, okay? I genuinely believe this is God's platform. I am a conduit. I don't know why I have a platform.
You want to threaten to hit my car with a hammer? God damn it! Marriage over, bitch. Goodbye.
And I don't know why you have this luck in life.
And she lured me in there and attacked me. Hit me with a hammer and, break my thumbs, my feet, back of my skull.
I really don't. I don't know why these things happen to you or why they happen to me.
Yeah, she took my keys, she took my phone, she went back inside and forced me to go back in and find out what was going on. Lures me to the garage that she pre-set up to be like a little prison.
But I know that my prayer was very intentional that night.
Then you stop it.
That I received that email. So I'm going to allow the internet to hear your testimony, hear what you think.
You know what? Do it all you want. Go ahead.
I don't want to. I want you to fucking start treating me better than you treat this car.
Everyone's like, what does this have to do with Fort Huachuca? Can Suge Knight see Brian Harpole at a military base? Like, do I care about Suge Knight's history? What does this have to do with anything? This is just illogical.
But that's not what we were doing today. But you have to do this. You have to.
I just
don't defend
ask you a
yourself
question.
now.
I can defend myself all I want because you're being insane.
Ally with me, and I know how much you are already going through fighting them, and I intend to help you raise money.
What is so bad about being a smartass?
To go through these lawsuits with the federal government. I know this is not easy. I know what your kid has been through. I know what your wife has been through.
Mess with your car. I haven't touched this car in forever.
And no one should have to be through this, have to go through this because they told the truth.
You do.
Yeah, I've never done crap like that, Mitch.
Yeah. That's the thing. You do it all the fucking time.
No.
That's what you do.
You just beat our door in with a hammer.
Why are you videotaping me?
Why are you acting crazy? You want me to let you in and that's what you do?
And potentially stumbled upon something corrupt, did definitively stumble upon something corrupt. And I think the public will be with you because...
Yeah. So, she did that. And eventually I was hearing my son cry. I was worried about him, having her maul him with the dogs.
There's two boats and hold.
So one of my viewers sent me this.
I really truly believe this. We each have light inside of us. And we need to know that is what inspires our hope as much as anything external to our...
Okay, why are you nodding your head or shaking your head no? Now, in my meditation, we meditate on the abstract, the I forget the word that we always use, but the idea of divine light in the heart, the supposition. We suppose that there's divine light in the heart, but it's a placeholder for abstract idea of God, or God in an abstract form. And light it's beyond light. It's God is more subtle than light, right? But it's just it's an object of meditation that we can gravitate to, right? Like I was talking about how these primitive people were told Jesus is the King of Kings because that's all they know is kings, right? But that's what we meditate on. And so, I don't know how I feel about when people say something that I know to be kind of true when the person is Kamala Harris, right? Like, I believe that to be a true thing, that you have, this idea of light, in terms of you have divinity inside of you. But, she doesn't know this, right? Like, she hasn't accessed the light inside of her. I mean, she talk about insincere. Like Kamala Harris, the reason she lost the election was she was fake, not as fake as Erica Kirk. I mean, Erica Kirk took it to a whole other level, but she was not authentic, right? So the first thing is whether a person's being authentic or not, and that's almost every politician's not authentic. Trump is one of the few authentic people. He's an authentic piece of shit, but at least he's authentic, and that's why people gravitate to him. Because he's a lying piece of shit, but he's authentic about it, right? And Kamala Harris wasn't her authentic self. They got to her and said, "Your laugh is fucking horrific. You stop laughing, bitch, because it's off-putting." And then she just was like, she was trying to be something she wasn't, and then the rest was history.
We need to know that that is what inspires our hope as much as anything external to ourselves.
No, she's shaking her head no.
And when we feel that and not allow an election or an individual to dampen that light, and instead let that light kind of carry us, in particular through moments of darkness, that we
Look.
not only act on that hope, but we inspire that hope in each other. And in particular at this moment, it is so important that we not only have hope, but that we understand that that should be a verb.
Hope is a verb. Okay. The problem here, and Don Lemon says, somehow, like he called these bag of people dumb fucks, which is, my thing, right? Which is weird. But anyways, like Kamala Harris is responsible for Donald Trump. Like you could not have run. Like, Kamala Harris, I've talked about this. She was always unelectable and unlikable. So she was banging some guy when she was 29. He was 61, something like that. There was like a huge age difference. This guy, I forget his name, but, might come to me later. It doesn't matter. Who cares? He was the kingmaker in California politics. Something Brown. And she banged him, and he got her a cushy job. 3 or 4 of them that she didn't deserve. And even after they stopped seeing each other, she was one of his people. And he got her through these various places. And she wrote books and did all these fucked up things that were always intended for her to move to a bigger stage. And then she was a senator for like 1 term. And she didn't do anything other than promote herself. And the Democratic establishment took notice of her. And she was on MSNBC or NBC News. And she was, pushing these things that she tried that failed, but she made it look like they were working. And she was, she had nothing. She'd done nothing. And she had been in elections where she was going to win. As a Democrat, like there was no, she was San Francisco and these other places. And she moved up the California political ladder. And nobody liked her. So her first real election was running for president, where she was going to have opponents. And they're pushing her out there, the mainstream media, like, oh, she's going to be great. She was polling at 12%. And then she debated, and she went down to 1%. And all the Democrats said, we don't like this bitch. Like, only less than 1%. And she withdrew. She fucking didn't even get 1 vote. She didn't make it to the primaries. She was, she popped. She was 12% where they had 15 other people who were polling at 1%. And then she dropped below all of those people, ran out of money, and was said, we don't like this bitch, right? But Joe Biden, because he said he was going to run with a woman and an African American woman or a woman of color, he picked her, out of this various people he had to choose from. And she was unlikable. And he was also insurance policy because everyone knew that she was unlikable. Like the same way J.D. Vance is an insurance policy for Trump right now, where people are like, well, we can't kill him, especially Israel. He's way worse, whatever it is, right? And so, she was an insurance policy, and everyone knew she was unelectable. Nobody liked her. Democrats didn't like her. Certainly independents and Republicans weren't going to like her. And so they ran her anyway on the back of Joe Biden being senile, which she had to fucking eat all that shit, because like she was telling everyone how great he was. And she was embarrassed multiple times by Biden. She was put in charge of the fucking border, which was going to be a major issue in the election. And she failed there. Remember all that shit. All the stupid shit she said. She was like fucking the worst. She had no chance of winning. And they ran her anyway, and she ran because, that's what you do as a politician. Running when you have no chance of winning shit means that you're rolling out the red carpet for Donald Trump. And so she has to wear that and own that. Like her suckiness and her selfishness caused Donald Trump to be president because there's no way she was winning. She never had won an election where she was put to the test because nobody liked her. And she was, unelectable.
I certainly empathize with Americans who are exhausted after 25 years of foreign entanglements in the Middle East. I understand the concern, but the difference is that back then we had dumb presidents, and now we have a president who actually knows how to accomplish America's national security objectives. So this is not going to be some long drawn out.
So that's your fucking bullshit excuse. He's so fucking unlikable and annoying. Looks like a woman, very kind of effeminate. His fucking eyeliner or whatever, built-in eyeliner, I don't know what the fuck that is. But that's what you're going to say? That the rest of the presidents were dumb, and now we have a smart one? Fuck. So you can go after a smarter audience. So my videos in the beginning, when my videos got millions of views, were not targeted at dumb fucks, but I made dumb fuck type of content where I said things that other people said that were, not true, or were, part of a mentality in the truth community that we all believe certain things. And, and I made videos about celebrities, these things. And I had some of my higher developed stuff, some of the spiritual stuff in those videos. My videos were not nearly as good. And as I evolved and I became more honest with myself and, honest about the truth community, and I saw things, I had to, learn these things, right? I stopped making videos that appealed to dumb fucks. And then eventually I started, talking about things I didn't want to talk about in the beginning, the things I knew about Christianity, things I knew about Republicans, and, certainly about Trump and, things as we've moved forward that was going to make the dumb fucks disappear. And I got tired of dumb fucks here. Like, there was all these cubies. For example, there's some of us, I worked I have a master's in counseling. And I worked in treatment centers with kids who were fucking, they were basically little sex offenders, right? They were, kids who had acted out sexually. Most of them had been sexually abused. And my ex, her story was her dad sexually and physically abused her, and her mother emotionally and psychologically tortured her and also physically abused her. So I was dealing with that in my personal life. The effects of sexual and physical abuse on my ex, and then, all the things that were doing. I was working on my professional career, and it's fucking depressing, and it's, and it's overwhelming the amount of effects of abuse and how fucked up human beings are and how badly they treat each other and treat their kids, and, we're just not healthy. And I know a shit ton about this, but it's real things. Like it's, things that real stories and real people. And then all these people came obsessed with this stuff with Pizzagate. But, a lot of it was imaginary and made up. And these things, like the QB stuff. I had worked on the front lines and dealt with these things in terms of the effects of this. And it's fucking depressing. It's soul killing. Like it's, when you see the way that people are, like, the dregs of society. My brother was counseling Vietnam veterans, and some of the stories he would hear and the things some of he told me, and they're like, I wish he never told me. Like there's things that are just so wrong. Like there was this kid whose parents had trained him and his brother when they were toddlers to be little pickpockets and also service people. They're drug addicts who would have their kids, they would pimp out their child kids to fucking scumbag people who wanted to abuse them, right? And this one kid was so fucked up. He was like a 7-year-old kid, and small, little kid who had been totally twisted by his parents. And he was, weird. And one day his little brother shows up, and talking to the social worker brings him by. Like he's in treatment too, but in some other place. And he's like a cute little kid. He's wearing a little suit, right? He's maybe 3 or 4. He's got glasses on. And I go, like, what's wrong with him? Because I can tell there's some kind of health thing. And she goes, he has AIDS. I'm like, he's fucking, not HIV, fucking AIDS, right? Because he was, maybe he was 5 years old. I don't know, but small, but like fucking, some kind of real little kid. And I was like, oh my God, I felt like I wanted to die. It was like, the implications of that shit, right? That his parents were, so, I had lived through all that, whatever I, gathered from that population of people. And then what I dealt with my ex, who would have these psychological fucking breakdowns and shit and pull out, every time we argued, I had to go hide all the knives in the house because she would, pretend that she was going to kill herself and get all, dramatic and psychologically fucked up and, all the things I've talked about in the Journey series. And so, and I knew the difference between speculation and, facts. And I started doing these things in my videos where I started to say, well, this is just speculation. This is, because it just, you want to tell the truth. Like you don't want to exaggerate just for views, just because everyone else is saying it. Like you have to be responsible. And I started to do that. And then I had all these QB people would come in, and I would be talking about Tom Hanks, who, made this creepy video with Jimmy Kimmel where Tom Hanks pretended he was doing toddlers and tiaras with his, make-believe daughter. And I've showed this before, and there's a whole memes, and I'm not going to show you the memes I have. But it was very creepy, right? And Tom Hanks was very creepy. But, this worthless piece of shit, Isaac Cappy, who was desperate for attention and approval. He was a third-rate Hollywood actor. And he came in and started saying things like Tom Hanks was a pedo and Steven Spielberg was a pedo. Now, Steven Spielberg did put weird, creepy sexual stuff in his videos, but he didn't have hardcore evidence to say we was, like we knew for sure. He was just throwing it out there. And the QAnon phenomenon started to run with that. And they would come to my videos and say, you don't get it. These people are all locked up in Guantanamo Bay. Yeah, and the fucking firmament is there too, right? Like, people who would state things as facts when there was no evidence to support it being factual. And so this is what happened to the truth community, right? And so, like, this is where all this stuff is, where these people appeal to some right-wing dumb fucks, people like Gady Vance and the rest of these people. But, if you're going to pander to dumb fucks, then, yeah, you're going to have a dumb fuck audience, and it's going to be big. Because dumb fucks are easy to fool, and, they'll come to you because they're dumb fucks. They're like, hey, someone tell me what to think. And then you tell them some crazy shit, and they run around telling everybody else about it. And they come back for you to learn more crazy shit. And you can sensationalize your videos and make them, whatever it is, pop because of the outlandish things you say. And that's what's wrecked the truth community. People looking for bombshell exaggerated shit when the truth is fucked up enough as it is, right?
We've got in, we've done the job of setting their nuclear program back. We're going to now work to permanently dismantle that nuclear program over the coming years, and that is what the president has set out to do. Simple principle. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. That has animated American policy over the past 130 days. It's going to continue to be a driving force of our policy in the Middle East for the next 3.5 years.
So everybody who thinks that this war is about nuclear weapons and nothing to do with Israel is a dumb fuck. Like, literally just, what I mean by that, everyone could be a dumb fuck. Like, everyone could have their moments. Like, we all have our, either we have our momentary dumb fuck moments, we're just, whatever you want to call it, right? We just get stupid. Like, we all could be retarded. Like, we all do stupid shit. But, like, in terms of being able to interpret data, as you get older, you are not as swayed by emotional bullshit, and you get away from the tribal left-right paradigm stuff and wanting to be a part of a group, and getting all angry and emotional about shit. And you start to be able to see through people's bullshit, especially as you get older. You've lived through life. You should be able to see that people are lying, and Trump's a fucking liar. And so if you still think Donald Trump is telling you the truth, then you're a dumb fuck. Like, come on. He's so much, it's so obvious now. You've been fooled so much. I don't know how you even come back from something like that. Like, as a person. Like, after, I don't think you could ever admit how much of a fool you've been by this time. I could see maybe in the beginning, but by now, Donald Trump has displayed himself. He doesn't give a shit about you or America. And he lies pretty much all the fucking time about everything. And he's pandering to these dumb fucks. And this is not about a nuclear weapon. Anybody looking at all the evidence and all the behaviors Iran has exhibited and all the things that Israel's done, people know that this is a war because Israel wanted this thing to happen. And Trump gave everything to Israel that they would, he got $250 million from Miriam Adelson and these other people. He's making bank out there in the Middle East. And, whatever way they were going to manipulate the stock market with the oil prices and shit, they made bank on this fucking war. Trump and his people, they grifted this war. And Trump lied and made it about nuclear weapons, and nobody should fucking believe that. There's zero evidence to support that. In fact, all the evidence shows the opposite. So that means that they're just talking to dumb fucks, like repeating these remedial fucking lies. And they don't give a shit about people who have above average IQs, who have above average level of perception. Or, the 50% of people, like, the 49% that are above average, right? Whatever it is, like, fucking, this is dumb fuck land. And if you're still basking in it, there's like zero hope for you at this point, right? Like, you can't have an awakening when you've been, like, the awakening should have happened 4 years ago to Trump. And like, that isn't even a real awakening. Like, that's just an inkling of, something that at some point you might be able to realize there's divinity within you and be able to, have a spiritual life. Like, it's just you're on at least a pathway to some partial realization about the nature of human existence. Anyways, okay, so I wanted to go shopping today. It's raining, and, I just had a little bit of a hard thing yesterday, and I felt a little iffy today, so going out and driving is always like a stressor. But I wanted to say this before I left, and luckily I retained it. Aren't you tired of being fucking talked to like a dumb fuck? Aren't you tired of, like, not just what J.D. Vance just said. It's across the board. For those of us who have just a reasonable grasp, we're not brilliant. We don't have to be fucking brilliant. The ability for abstract thought, common sense, and there's no fear, or at least minimal fear. Fear has been minimalized, of realizing your system's fucked, right? That's a big hump for most people to get over. Most people don't want the truth because it would make them not be able to sleep at night. Like, there's a lot of people who want control over things, and they want to, live in a world where they don't have to think about the fucking nightmare apocalyptic shit that's about to happen, right? All of us have some of that still. We all, stress about it, but we've come to terms with it. But those of us who are able to see things for what they are, because it's obvious, once you get rid of the veils of fear, of, realizing the people that are controlling your system want to kill you, all that shit. So, I was flipping through the channels, and CNN was shitting on RFK Jr., who is, himself a piece of shit. But the reason they're shitting on them is what? They get funded by Big Pharma. Like, we all know that. We know everything comes through CNN and MSNBC and Fox and all these other mainstream, whatever it is funded by Big Pharma, amongst other people. And there's always going to be, anybody who's attacking Big Pharma, attacking, it used to be Israel, and we don't know why they've allowed that all of a sudden. But, when there's censorship of things and they are pushing an agenda, it's because they are being paid to push that agenda as a network, as individuals. And then they talk to us like dumb fucks, like we don't fucking know that they just didn't try to poison us all. My introduction to the video, with the stuff with COVID, that we know they fucking know, right? They know we know, and then they treat us like crazy conspiracy theorists and all the rest of it, because they're pandering to people who are either so scared they can't see the truth, or they're just dumb and remedial. And the people who, again, just we don't even have to be the cream of the crop. I mean, certainly in this, it's not hard to be the cream of the crop with the idiocracy that's befalling us. But, all of us who can see, especially people from older generations, and we've seen we're just tired of the bullshit. Don't lie about Trump being fucking high IQ. The guy is an absolute piece of shit, and it's funny. He's a funny piece of shit, intentionally or unintentionally, more unintentional. Like I was just eating lunch and I watched some sports stuff, and then they were showing that the Prime Minister of Britain has just, today's Monday, June 22nd, has just announced that he's stepping down. And then I flipped to another channel, and they were talking about how it was Morning Joe's opening thing, and then I went back to live TV, and it was CNN maybe or whatever, MSNBC, one of the two. And they were talking about how Trump blabbed out and leaked this information that he was given privately, that he was stepping down. Because he's got this frontal lobe issue. He's got fucking brain deterioration, and he's also just an angry piece of shit. You can't leak shit like that. Like, if somebody tells you that in confidence, a foreign government, and you leak it out, I mean, all the people who know, all the other politicians, and the way he's been bad-mouthed in Europe, I mean, like, the guy is just, this is bad for America. It's bad from the standpoint that, Trump got elected, and people are like, America fucking sucks right now if they're going to pick motherfuckers like this after Joe Biden was in Europe shitting on himself. And, like, that's the best America has to offer. People are like, well, we got to fucking kneecap these motherfuckers, right? Which, of course, they're going to do eventually. Because they have to. America's going to be taken down. America has to be taken down. It's taking down itself. And so, we're imploding. And so, just all the people out there, these mainstream people, I mean, even with the Candace Owens and the Tucker Carlson and all these people who, are late to the party in terms of being truthers, but now they act like they've invented this stuff. And it's like, no, you guys are just, when it counted, you weren't here. Now it's convenient for you. You're jumping on late, and you're still talking bullshit and putting out distractions and things like this, and you're not doing anything that's helpful other than promoting yourselves. And so just, the overall thing's just, we're tired. We're just tired of being talked to like we're dumb fucks. I mean, it's, there's no shame and embarrassment in it. It used to be that people cared what smart people thought of them, right? They cared what, other smart people or smart people thought of them. They didn't pander and talk down to people and just dive into the idiocracy. They cared about what intelligent people would say, and like they didn't want to say things that were so embarrassingly ignorant and stupid and, self-promotional and selling out. Okay, I just want to say that. Let's get back into the other stuff here. So apparently Sean Ryan interviewed Candace Owens. I don't know if she did the same because she's been posting pictures of him, which have been popping up on my phone and shit. Or up here on Twitter or something. I don't know where it is. I think on both. Here it is. But this was said.
This is the Israeli Minister of National Security. Have you read this shit? Let me read it to you. For every terror of an Israeli mother, 1,000 Lebanese mothers must weep. All of Lebanon must burn. With all due respect to the Americans, Israel must make it clear to the entire world that the blood of our sons and the security of our citizens are not forfeit. All of Lebanon must burn. Our supreme duty is to protect the citizens of Israel and the soldiers of the IDF, and this commitment takes precedence over every other consideration. I told the Prime Minister, even in our private meetings, for every tear of an Israeli mother, 1,000 Lebanese must weep. Enough with the ping pong. In the Middle East, you don't win with measured responses and restraint. You need to go berserk, to obliterate, to crush the terror.
So, good times. So there's a bunch of reflecting pool news. Work will begin immediately on fixing the seriously vandalized reflecting pool. I just inspected it and could only say to myself and those gathered around me, wow, who would do such a thing? Sick, deranged people. We will fix it. President Donald J. Trump. So that was part one. So here's part two, the deflecting pool. That's brilliant. And then here, Trump regime sent National Guard to protect the reflecting pool. Your tax dollars at work, part three. Like people are just coming in and vandalizing. You know, who wants to get into that fucking? I mean, look at it. You know, it's the algae isn't going away. Like they're fighting a losing battle. You know, I saw a great quote. I'm watching. I like to watch that Alone show. And there was a quote from, I think it was Thoreau. Might have been from the guy who wrote whatever. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, whatever his name is. Anyway, some famous writer wrote. People say nature is my friend. I'd like to see your enemy, right? And again, I didn't get the quote correctly. But the idea being, like, people think nature is your friend, and I'd like to see your enemy. Because nature is, you know, it wouldn't be Thoreau. Maybe Kurt Vonnegut, I don't know. But either way, if I find the correct quote, if people think nature is their friend, then they sure don't need an enemy. Now, I like that quote and I don't like it. It's brilliant and it's not. But nature is not your friend. Like it is in a way because everything's there for you. But those of us who have farmed, homesteaded, you know, my first homestead, we didn't have any power equipment. And, you know, we didn't have the money for it and our farm was too small and, you know, all the things. And we lived in what's called, what would be considered a lush area. You know, area where it gets lots of rainfall and a long growing season. And just the weeds itself. And weeds, you know, can be beneficial if you work with nature. But if you want to have, like, you know, it takes so much money to harvest and plant all the farm food that we have. But then just, if you figured out how much money and gas is burned every year, how many gallons of gas, and now, of course, electric mowers and things, is used just to cut people's lawns. Like, Americans have no idea the waste. You know, grass is food, right? But, you know, we have an issue where we're not running our cows on our pasture. And we have to bush hog. I have to bush hog the area. But we leave it as like a natural prairie, for most of the year. You know, we have all this great goldenrod that grows in the spring, the end of the summer. And then when that goes to seed, I try to cut everything down and you know, for the winter. But after a while, you get some little trees growing up. If you have an empty field, you know that you're going to graze your animals. And if you leave it alone and you don't bush hog it, you don't keep on top of it, before you know it, you got to clear it again of all the wood and all the trees and all the things, bushes and shrubs. And again, you can have some animals, you know, cows will eat a lot more than grass. So you can have it somewhat like a natural pasture. But you have to keep your eye on it no longer becoming a pasture. But, you know, grass is food. You know, you have cows and you have animals that graze in the, you know, whatever they might be, cows and other livestock. And, you know, you can't really do that with woods. And so you have to clear the woods. Sometimes you get a forest fire, so you find the land when it just becomes a field. But then you got to make sure you get all the stumps out, so when you're haying, it doesn't destroy your machine. So it's all these things, or your scythe or whatever you're using. Like, you got to clear everything. You got to clear the trees, and you got to clear the stumps. You got to dig up all the stumps. You got to get rid of the rocks and shit like that. And then the nature just takes it back from you. Like, it just says, fuck you. And you get all these trees growing up out of nowhere. You know, the weeds are, you know, great. The cows might eat the weeds. You know, horses can't, but, you know, all these types of things. And so, you know, you're constantly battling nature. If you have machines and power, you know, the power equipment, you have a shot. But if you didn't have that, you need, like, mass amount of people labor. And you can have your family and friends. You know, I watched these videos back when I was scything. We used to scythe a little bit. I was learning how to do that. You know, I was learning the technique. And I, you know, made a scythe rake. And I, you know, got some, like, I just made some, like, just, you know, tobby hay just to experience the thing. And I scythed around the yard because we weren't, you know, we didn't have a lawnmower at the time. And we were using our cows to graze in the yard, so I would cut down weeds and things to keep it whatever it was, right? But, you know, it is like you'd have a whole neighborhood of people, whole village people would go scythe somebody's field because that's what it would take. Otherwise, you need a big machine. And then you have to rake the hay. You have to spray the hay. You have to dry the hay. And you have to then harvest the hay some way. And now they have machines for it, which cost a lot of money. So you need lots of acreage, and you have to keep the field in a certain condition so it can be hayed. And if you don't want weeds and shit, if it's got to be horse hay or something like that, then you have to deal with that. And so nature cooperates, but it also takes over. Like it doesn't, do what you want. It's bidding. You have to like constantly battle it. And if you're out in like real fucking wilderness, like some of these people that go out where there's various types of animals competing with you for food, may attack you or something like that. Some places there's animals out there, predatory animals and things, and mice are coming in. Just little small animals and all that shit, and it's a constant fucking struggle. And so it's a good quote, and it's but it's also there's another angle to it, which is nature's there if you work with nature, but if you want to dominate nature, you're in for a losing battle. You can only sustain your handling of nature for a short period of time. That's why there's slave labor and shit like that, because people had to deal with large masses of property, and they couldn't do it on their own, so they had to take slaves and servants, serfs, whatever it was, low non-expensive labor, because they didn't have machines and shit to deal with it. But you get rid of the machines, people would be taking slaves again, because that's how it works, right? That's you're fighting against an unstoppable force in nature. Donald Trump says that multiple individuals have been arrested for vandalizing the magnificent reflecting pool. They said the person wrote pole. America couldn't have chosen a bigger idiot. The United States Park Police have arrested multiple individuals for vandalizing our nation's magnificent reflecting pole. Or he did say pole. He misspelled. Who would do such a thing? These are very serious crimes having to do with the destruction of national monuments. Years in jail. Work will begin immediately on its repair, President Donald J. Trump. Years in jail. He's sentencing people. He's arresting people for vandalization. That he thinks that they're trying to rip up the liner that he's put in there just to fuck him over, right? And that years in jail. He wants them. Why not give him the death penalty for, So, like, that's how fucking twisted he is. So going back to this idea of it being the deflecting pool. So Trump is back on his martial law thing. Lots of killing going on in Chicago. 22 people shot, at least 4 dead. Why isn't Governor Pritzker calling me for help? I can make Chicago a safe city in 1 month. In 1 year, it would be one of the safest. D.C. went from one of the worst to one of the safest cities in the U.S., President Donald J. Trump. So he is, he wants to put, remember, he's always wanted to put martial law. He wants to put National Guard in all these cities, which is a whole nother thing. He's just the guy to bring all these things in and make it like, all right, we can get away with this. He can, set up the template for what if when the Democrats come in and they start putting soldiers all over Republican areas, right? And like these people, what are you going to say then? Like all these dumb fuck Trumpers, because you don't want to break the posse comitatus, but it's going to be broken. They're going to use, U.S. troops will be on American streets at some point, because it's going to have to. It's going to be, when the meltdown comes. But here he is, talking shit about Governor Pritzker, his deflecting pool. But this isn't deflection. Like he's all over the place doing stupid shit, right? Keir Starmer will resign as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He failed badly on 2 very important subjects: immigration and energy. Open North Sea oil! Exclamation point. I wish him well, President Donald J. Trump. The guy fucking does things. He's all over the place. He's like trying to fucking put martial law into Chicago. He's fucking up the reflecting pool. He's got some deal falling apart in the Strait of Hormuz. He's all over the place. And he's just, can't contain himself. He's tweeting about all this shit, and he's violated all these rules of, it's not cool to do shit like that, right? When Lindsey Graham, who now licks Trump's taint, and of course Israel, that piece of shit, but Lindsey Graham was, once looking for money from Trump. So Trump had his phone number. And then Lindsey Graham started to insult Trump when Trump was the leading candidate for president in 2015-16. And Trump gave out Lindsey Graham's personal phone number to his supporters and said, harass him, And he gave him out his personal phone number. And Lindsey Graham made this gay-ass ad where he was destroying phones, putting them in blenders and putting them in, hitting them off a tee. Like, that was his stupid ass response. But it was a total fucking dick move on Trump. As bad as Lindsey Graham is, you don't do shit like that, right? You don't say shit like this. He's always been a pompous asshole, but now he's like lost his shit. He's got brain deterioration. He's doing things and saying things, and it's going to start concerning people. Like there's going to be things that are going to be, it's going to be Joe Biden land pretty soon. He's almost as old as Joe Biden was his last couple of years, and he's certainly breaking down. I think he's been wearing diapers for a number of years as well. I mean, like he's he's too old and he's too fucked in the head to survive all these things that he's doing. He's at some point it's going to be so bad that people will be like, we gotta fucking rein this guy in, and it's going to be a lot easier with Trump than it was for Biden, because everyone but Fox News will be in on getting rid of Trump, right?
This week I got into a little bit of controversy unintentionally because I said something that I've been saying for years. It wasn't anything new, but I made the point, and I want to make it with you. One of the reasons that our nations are tied together is because it is upon the Jewish foundation that Christianity was formed, and upon the Jewish and Judeo-Christian foundation Western civilization was formed, and without that there would not be an America. It is as simple as that.
Okay, so you're not helping them by saying that, right? I don't know why the audience is bathed in red, but he's over in Israel talking this shit. And so you're not helping them by saying this. You're being memed out, and you're just giving more fuel to the fire and more hatred towards Israel and Jewish people. Because the reality of the thing is, the Jewish people did not accept Jesus. The Jewish leadership and the Jewish people ever since then. They don't like the guy. They disavow him. They don't claim him as the greatest Jewish person, or at least the most influential Jewish person in all history. I mean, he's the most successful, right? Like, if you're going to talk about a legacy, and, I think Jesus is bummed out. I mean, my understanding that his soul is bummed out with Christianity, like he's said that. And so, within the Sajmark system of meditation that I do, Babaji intercommune with them. And Babaji knew very little about Christianity, but Jesus was bummed out by what's happened with his teachings and his movement. Of course he would, like all these souls would be. Every one of these souls who came down and, worked to enlighten humanity, or, evolved up with their pursuit of divinity, and, was working to bring other people along with them, are disappointed in what's happened. The world has gone to shit, and their religions have gone to shit. But Jesus, is rejected by the Jewish people to this day. They don't celebrate his birthday. They don't celebrate any aspect of his life. They don't acknowledge him. They look at him as like a piece of shit, right? Like he's like almost like less than a goy. And so to say all that stuff, Jesus evolved out of his religion. And like, that's the first part of what, one of the teachings of the Sajmark system that I know, and you guys hear it from me, is that, Jesus was not a Christian and Buddha was not a Buddhist. I think there was somebody else, right? These religions that, they were born, Buddha was born in a Hindu area. He grew up as a Hindu, and then he evolved into become what he became, a spiritual person, and then the religion was formed after him. Jesus was born Jewish, and they became spiritual, which is what everyone in the Sajmark system is supposed to do. You leave your religion behind. Swami Vivekananda's great quote, "A religion's a great thing to be born into, but a horrible thing to die in." And so these religions are, impediments to our collective evolution and betterment and our connection to God. They act as a middleman, which I talk about all the time, right? And so with this clown and all these other people who make these stupid claims, his Judaism was his, he was born in that religion, but he was, he was against it. Like, he was a reformer, and the religion killed him. There's no doubt that the Pharisees wanted him dead because that's what I mean. Look at how many people they've killed now over, just land, never mind power and all these things. And so if Jesus was the Messiah, they killed their own Messiah, right? And if a real spiritual person came in the form of, a spiritual being, a human being that was supposed to liberate the Jewish people in the form of a Messiah, unless that person was completely in line with Israeli politics, they would kill him. If a saint was born in the, Jewish tradition, I'm sure there's been plenty of them. They've killed them, right? Because, or he would have to keep his mouth shut and hide out because they certainly wouldn't celebrate him because it's not in that culture. They want material power, war power, political power, religious power. They don't want real spirituality. No religion does. And so this guy's full of shit. So I don't search for this stuff. Twitter just recommends it because I clicked on a few things. They have a much better comprehensive recommendation of shit than other, YouTube and the rest of them that suppresses your, they see what you want, but they won't give it to you. But I don't necessarily want this. I just, click on various things and they show, stuff shitting on Trump and some of this other stuff. But this came out. So now listen up, Mr. Fifth Column.
תקשיב טוב, אדון גיס 50, מר כסיף, לא אתה
Neither you nor not your partners
ולא השותפים שלך שמגנים
who are defending you from your home and
עליך
abroad
מבית ומבחוץ, מזיזים לנו כהוא זה.
matter to us. The government doesn't shudder about you.
הממשלה הזו לא מגמגמת לגביך, אתה יכול להמשיך
You can keep dreaming. What an ugly language, right? I mean, you hear foreign languages, and some of them are beautiful, and some of them are pretty hard to listen to. It's a very aggressive language with a lot of sounds like they're hawking up a loogie, right?
לחלום שנסיים את הלחימה
That we will end the war without victory.
ללא ניצחון. אנחנו לא מתביישים לומר
We are not ashamed that we want to see the soldiers of the IDF,
שאנחנו רוצים לראות את חיילי צה"ל הגיבורים
the holy heroes of ours,
והקדושים שלנו תופסים את
catching Sinar and his terrorists by the ears
סינואר והמחבלים שלו באוזניים
and dragging them all across the Gaza Strip
וגוררים אותם בכל הרצועה בדרך למרתפי שבת.
on their way to the dungeons of the prison authority. She's a real fucking princess, right? she's a real sweet flower over there. But that language is hard to listen to. Woman who instantly forgave her husband's assassin can't forgive anyone questioning her narrative. They got the fucking the poors here, right? So going back to the Hebrew language, I don't know what it's like to listen to English if you're from a foreign country, and American English. I bet it sounds pretty brutal. Like some languages, are just, they sound melodic, and they're, and the language that you have affects the way you think in your own language, right? You think in your language. Some people are able to think in multiple languages. I mean, I can't, When I was in India, there was another American guy there, and we were listening to all these people, seeing all these people from Europe and other countries who they're multilingual. And he said, there's a joke. A person who speaks bilingual knows two languages. A person who speaks three languages, trilingual. A person who speaks one language is American. It's a great thing there. But, so I think my wife sent me this a while ago. The last time El Nino hit this strong hit, it killed 50, and El Nino this strong hit, it killed 50 million people. That was 3 to 4% of the entire world population. Scale that today, and you're looking at 250 million equivalent. In 1877, Super El Nino triggered simultaneous droughts across India, China, Brazil, and East Africa. Crops failed on 4 continents. At the same time, famine lasted 3 years. Researchers have called it arguably the worst environmental disaster to ever befall humanity. NOAA's latest update gives a 2 in 3 chance this one reaches strong or very strong by fall. European models are even more aggressive. Sea surface temperatures exceed 2 Celsius above normal to qualify as super. Trajectory is pointing directly at that threshold. So, there's a lot more here. But if there's going to be shit, right? It's just going to happen. These things are going to unfold. Okay, this has been sitting here a while. One of my viewers must have sent this to me. I'm surprised they didn't play it, but anyway. Oh.
Of the Invisible Ocean series. Here is exactly how a Wi-Fi signal forces your cells to leak. To understand the damage, you have to the hardware. Placed along the membrane of almost every cell in your body are tiny voltage-sensitive doors called voltage-gated calcium channels, or VGCCs. These channels are highly concentrated in your brain, your heart, and your nervous system. When a natural electrical signal passes through your body, these doors open for a fraction of a second, allowing calcium to rush into your cells and trigger a biological action, like a heartbeat, a muscle contraction, or a thought. These VGCCs are perfectly tuned to the natural direct current voltage of the human body, but there is a glitch in the hardware. The sensors on these doors are incredibly delicate. When you introduce a chaotic artificial electromagnetic field, like the router in your living room or the phone in your hand, the frequency tricks the sensor to the gates. The doors get jammed wide open. The result is a massive flood of intracellular calcium when there shouldn't be. This isn't the good kind of calcium that builds bones. When too much calcium gets inside the cells, it creates toxic free radicals that literally rust your cells from the inside out, not to mention the uncalled for actions mentioned earlier. This is a non-thermal effect. It isn't cooking you, it is chemically rusting you, and the primary casualty, your cellular engines. In part 3, we dive into the mitochondria.
Okay, I'm sure that's not going to be good news either. I have no knowledge of anything this guy's talking about. I understand the words, some of them, of course, cells, and I have limited knowledge on all these subjects. But the Whispers of the Brighter World say similar things. I've had my own experience, even talking about it in this video, with the regular heartbeat, and the rest of us, people have all, I know the Wi-Fi is affecting us. We have electrical current. Everyone thinks about the heartbeat, muscle contraction, and the rest of it. But obviously, this is a big deal. So, I don't know what to say about it, but it's there. It's a bad, it's a bad system. When we started bringing, I haven't talked about this in a while, but you'll hear it in some of my older videos. There's a condition that was diagnosed when they first brought in people to use the telegraph, right? And so they had these wires running across the country, and they were able to sell these send these Morse code like signals on the telegraph. And they had telegraph operators that would, who would send messages through a telemachine where they'd hit a button, I think it was Morse code, some kind of code, and they would, then people would get a telegram that would be typed out for them. It would be like a text message. And the telegraph workers all started to develop all these nervous disorders, anxiety, depression, and physical disorders. And there was a Russian doctor that called this neurasthenia. And it became a whole host of medical conditions now that everybody has years later, and much more. These were just telegraph wires. There wasn't Wi-Fi flying around, all this stuff. This electricity that's being used. What happens when you get an electric jolt? You get tased, you get hit by lightning. Just like with any of these. What you get when you get nuked by microwaves. These things can all be weaponized, and they can make your body just stop. Right? They can make your body just glitch out and blow up or whatever it is, like completely die and cease. You can get hit by lightning and be dead in seconds, right? And so, it's just small doses aren't any better. There just takes a longer period of time to fuck you up. And so, this is what we're dealing with. And no one's going to get rid of these things. Our society depends on electricity and these other things. And so, now you have just more of it. And then, of course, the kids are more and more depressed and weak and pathetic because, the stuff is just getting worse, right? So there's that. Okay, so if you take away all the kids, all the ill-informed people, the people who don't give a shit about politics, don't ever, barely knows the vice president, don't know who the vice president is, don't watch any of these things, don't watch the news. You get rid of all those people, right? 80% of the rest of the people know this guy's full of shit. It's like 20% of those people. And a lot of those, people who I talked about, a lot of the Trumpers, they barely know who Trump is. They don't watch any of these things. And what they watch is, whatever they're watching is people telling them how great Trump is without any knowledge of any of this shit that the rest of us see all the time, right? And, they've completely cut themselves off from, the way Trump has cut himself off from anything but Fox News. So he has no idea how the polls are against him and the rest of it. So here.
This will last for at least 50 years, and you'll never have a leak. It's very strong. You couldn't, if you had a knife, I don't want to give anybody ideas. If you had a knife, you can't even cut it. So strong, so powerful. It's like powerful rubber. It is beautiful, sealed. This will last for at least 50 years.
So there's that. Like this whole reflecting pool has just become, another example of Trump's failure, and it's hilarious that the whole thing is great. Okay, so it's Tuesday, June 23rd. This got copyrighted. So I am removing it. It was this liberal guy who read the quote about Trump and Howard Stern talking about how Trump could go into the beauty pageants, and this MAGA person went into complete denial. It's kind of important to the rest of the video that this, the idea of this thing here, but she, defended it and just whatever it is. I guess this guy does this regularly, some liberal guy, which, means that he's a piece of shit because he's probably not apologizing for Biden or the Democrats, right? And the liberal shit that brought Trump to, his second term is, that whole stuff. But the denial from this MAGA woman when Trump is just claiming, talking about basically a sexual assault, going into the dressing room of these beauty contestants, and she's finding ways to rationalize it. So you get the idea. All right, so let's get back to it here. Okay, so this dude...
My country of the Netherlands allows euthanizing young people, even teenagers. In fact, even children ages 12 to 15 are allowed to be euthanized, and children ages 16 and 17 are allowed to have themselves euthanized without parental consent. Of all the people in the Netherlands in the past few years, under age 30, who have been euthanized, it turns out, however, according to this magazine for psychiatry, that 74% of them were women, and 75% of the patients killed were autistic. Are you kidding me? Are we seriously euthanizing autistic females now because they have trouble starting life, because they are depressed or traumatized? That's like saying we should euthanize every teenager in a wheelchair. But we don't do that. We don't euthanize...
the day's young, bro. All right, so I don't know if this is true. That's pretty fucked up. But, look, depopulation's coming, right? It's coming to a country near you. We've reached peak population, or will soon, and there's been a long time plan, and whether it happens because the people who control the system do shit, which will be part of it, or because it's just the natural order of things, we're mentally ill. Like when you get overpopulated, like they do studies on overpopulation of any species, and the species loses its shit, right? They just fall apart, and they become weak, prone to diseases. Their food supply, gets dwindles. They become insane, especially if they're packed in small areas. They start eating their young and just all kinds of, it just becomes a whole, horror show. And overpopulation, when it reaches its peak, you see this with any species, it's a nightmare. And then there's a chance that the species dies out altogether because of the damage they do to themselves, and they weaken the shit out of their species. And so, that's one of the things that happens in nature, where the fittest survive because, there's a healthy predatory type situation or competitiveness to only the strong survive and the species gets stronger. But when there's overpopulation, the species gets extremely weak. And so this is happening, like these things. I don't know if this is true or not, but I assumed it is because how fucked up everything is. But this is what's up. This is the time that's going to happen. You're going to see there's going to be massive die-off, and some of us will see it and some of us won't, because we'll either be a part of it or we'll be observing it, and either way, it's happening. Okay, a couple more things here.
We changed Israel's security doctrine. We initiate, we attack, we surprise, and we attack those enemies that seek our destruction, that seek to kill us. We attack them before they have a chance to do so. If you know Hebrew, akam leorgecha, ashkem leorgo. Kill them first.
Yeah, that's fucked up, bro. Kill them first. You can say that about anything, right? Kids, well, these kids are going to grow up to be terrorists. I mean, holy shit, right? He's just saying that out loud. Like, that's pretty fucked. And then there's this. So there's this one. The war is finished when I say it's finished. And he's jamming the Epstein files in his face. There's another thing with Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that Trump was definitely the one who was most pushing to suppress the Epstein files. Or maybe the only one. Then that was enough, right? Because that would be enough. So one more thing I want to show you here. Okay, I want to segue into, this is my last thing, and then I want to segue into a voiceover. So this happened.
Scary close encounter caught on camera at a Chula Vista park. Keanu McCullen shot this video last Friday when a coyote hopped the fence you see there and confronted his pit bull at Loma Verde Park. The animals just stared at each other for about 10 seconds, and then the coyote got aggressive.
What the fuck, bro?
Hey! Hey!
Come on, bro.
Hey! 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 Hey!
What the fuck you doing? You're a fucking pit bull, bro.
Yeah, by that yelling,
you're a fucking pit bull, bro.
Chased the coyote away, but he is worried this is just going to happen again.
Yeah, because your fucking pit bull's a fucking pussy, bro.
I'm an animal lover. Everybody knows I'm an animal lover, but this particular coyote needs to be removed. I'm not suggesting that.
Yeah, that's why you get a fucking pit bull. The pit bull should be dragging that coyote around by his neck right now, bro. All right. Let me switch over to voiceover. I was totally fucking bummed by this. Okay, so our pit bulls are even pussies, right? Like, the whole reason you would get a pit bull would be like if a coyote walks into your yard, that pit bull's going to whack that fucking coyote, and the coyote, should never. I mean, this should never happen. We're just talking about the physical strength and bite radius of a pit bull. So I don't have aggressive dogs, but we've talked about maybe getting a bigger dog because of our, small dogs, something that would be able to chase a coyote away, right? And, there's places where the coyotes see a person, human being, usually red states, and they run away. I did this whole pussification of humans getting their ass kicked by seagulls and monkeys and shit just coming up and stealing your shit, right? And, this is a problem because, people are supposedly supposed to be the apex predator, and you have animals just running away from animals and all these things. Whatever it might be. And, I have very small dogs. We have Papillons, and they're great for a lot of things, but they're clearly not going to defend anything. They don't have, they have weak jaws. They don't bite very hard. They don't bite at all. They're good athletes. They're good dogs. But, if a coyote comes, and they can run away from most things. They're fast and nimble and good athletes. But coyotes are fast. We were walking through our pasture one time, and a coyote in the middle of the fucking day, I don't know what happened. It ran, jumped the fence. We had 2 fences in our pasture, and it just ran fucking by us. And it was flying. I couldn't believe how fast this thing was. I don't know what happened, what it was running from. I was looking up waiting to see like Godzilla or some shit, because it was running like, something horrific was behind it. So, anyways, but we don't have the kind of dogs that are aggressive. And so there's good and bad things about having those kind of dogs. I worked in this treatment center, or I worked in this outpatient clinic. And then one of the neighborhoods where a lot of the clients would come to our place, most of the clients were on Medicaid. And, I don't know how we were associated with this, but there was a foster family, and they had taken in a kid, and they had a, big ass Rottweiler in their backyard. And the kid was like 5 years old. They went to pet the dog, and the dog fucking ate the kid's face and killed it, right? And so, when you get a monster, you get, a dog that's capable of hurting you. It comes with, or hurting other people. It's a whole, it's a whole nightmare. You're basically, my brother had a pit bull for a while, and my nephews were young, and he said like they were roughhousing, and the pit bull barked, and they all just sat in the fucking couch. my nephews were kind of, wild a little bit. And they were doing whatever they were doing. And the pit bull barked and they just sat down on the couch and just didn't move. You had to get away from it. But my brother said, I didn't want to put my family's life at the hands of, the jaws of a dog, right? The decision-making power of a dog, because sometimes they do fucked up shit. Pit bulls, right? We all know the history of pit bulls and some of these dogs. And I had a shared, like, I moved to Atlanta. My best friend from high school was down there. And my roommate was like an ex-Marine, and his girlfriend just dumped him, but he was dating this stewardess who was just a fucking nightmare of a person. But he had this great pit bull named Crockett. And, I waited table, so I was home during the day. And I loved that dog. I would take that dog out to the park where I play, I was playing basketball, and it would chase me and try to get the ball away from me. And I had to, I was dribbling the ball, and he was trying to nip at the ball, and I had to make sure he didn't bite me by mistake. And it was a big, aggressive dog. I mean, very, very nice dog. I like that dog. One time we were just sitting there, and my roommate came home, my housemate came home, and he was wearing a fucking hat. And Crockett came running at him, like, just out of nowhere. Like, before, I mean, I didn't even know the guy had come through the door. And Crockett was running across the living room. And the dude said something. Crockett, said his name, and pulled off his hat. And Crockett came back looking like, I almost just offed my fucking owner. Like, he was all psychologically, he had an existential crisis because, he jumped into action. And that's my association with pit bulls, right? And these kind of dogs, they kick ass. And, we've looked into dogs, like if we have pasture animals, there's these dogs called Great Pyrenees. They're these fluffy white dogs. We had one for a while. It was a nightmare. It had been chained its whole life, so it wasn't trained at all, so we had to give it away on Craigslist because it ran through the house, it ran through the fence and started chasing horses. It was a fucking nightmare. Like everyone in the neighborhood hated the dog we had for like 2 weeks. I kept on trying to put it in the pasture, but it would just, and I didn't want to keep it chained up. And it was a nice dog, but it was called Angel, but it was like a devil. And one time I had to go retrieve it from my neighbor's pasture. And I put it on a leash, and I hooked the leash to the back of the truck because it rolled in fucking horse poop. And the dog jumped off the fucking truck while I was driving. It was choking to death. I had to jump out of the fucking truck and lift this big heavy dog back into the covered in horse shit, which got all over me, back into the back of the truck. So it was just a nightmare. But if you raise a Great Pyrenees with goats or various animals, they bond with those animals and they just sit there. We saw one, that was, the woman had alpacas, and we got some goats from her. She had Nigerian dwarf goats because the alpacas are very expensive. They're like 20 grand a piece. This one was a wealthy woman with a big farm. And the alpacas, if their mother rejects them, then they would have goat milk to feed the baby alpacas. The baby alpacas take like 14 months they're in terms of being in utero. They have a gestation period of 14 months before they give birth. And so anyways, like, you have these dogs, and of course German Shepherds, and you have these other type of dogs. But those dogs are weapons, and you got to deal with that part of it. And so if you're going to have a pit bull that can lose its shit and bite you or somebody else, or go maul some kid down the street, you have to live with that kind of consequence, and it's a stressor because these things are aggressive. But the one reason you'd have it is if a coyote fucking walk, in this case they're in a park, it comes up to your fucking pit bull, your pit bull's going to grab it by the fucking throat. When I was a kid, we had a dog called Libby. That was, Libby's full name was Liberation. And my hippie sister, she was a boomer hippie. And her hippie friends, they had this dog. And the dog was a nice dog. It looked a little bit like the character Benji, but it was a bigger dog. It was a mutt. And I liked Libby. Libby didn't play. Libby was abused and beat, so there was some kind of neglected dog. So Libby was kind of boring. Definitely kind of pacified. And I tried to, get Libby to run around, do shit. He just kind of hung out. He was a nice dog, but he was all right. And one time we came out to the front porch, which there's a lot of action there. There was a bar down the street called Cypress Arms. I used to walk by it when I went to Perry's pharmacy to buy candy and comic books. And these guys, there's one big guy and two little guys, and the two little guys chase this guy down, and they pulled over. You know, they're leaving this bar. It's like fucking, you know, one in the afternoon, and they start fighting on the lawn. Two big guys are beating up the fucking one big guy. You know, they're drunk as fuck, and my mom, like, come out of nowhere, she runs out and starts whacking the guys with the broom. I was like, holy shit. Like, I was just, like, watching this fight. And all of a sudden, my mom enters my, like, you know, it was like a TV thing, enters my viewing area. I'm like, holy shit, my mom's sadistic now. And so another time, our neighbor named the Lyonses, they had a nice golden retriever named Blondie that was just out in their backyard. Like, we had a fenced backyard, and they did. And Blondie would stick her nose through the fence, and I would pet her, and she'd lick me. She was like, huge dog, really friendly, and I pet her for a long time because she was just left in the backyard by herself. But the Lyonses had this guy come over to their house, and he had this pit bull, and I had no idea what a pit bull was. This was like a fighting dog, like it was like, you know, he was a real, and he had it on a short leash. And we're watching this guy walk his dog into the house. We had this small front porch. It wasn't like we hung out there, like you couldn't, you know, it wasn't like it was just a little door frame. I don't even know why. It was just a bunch of stairs, but a bunch of times we're on there. You know, my brother came back from Vietnam, and he tried to jump off the third floor. He was like he was a thrill seeker because a lot of these guys come back from war and they're just bored because they're like doing all kinds of crazy shit in war. And we had a third floor, house, big old house, and he jumped off with a fucking like a big beach umbrella. So there's all kinds of shit. Like there's lots of activity out there. And Libby, like, comes to life, like this dead, passive, abused dog who's, like, at the end of his rope. And he goes charging and jumps at the fucking pit bull that's in somebody else's yard. We've never seen Libby get aggressive. And, you know, and within seconds, the dog had Libby on his back, you know, and he pulled the dog off it, the owner did, and he got bit by the pit bull. You know, like, so this is the disadvantage of having, you know, big, aggressive dog. But the good thing you would have is it fucking kills coyotes, because you don't want coyotes coming into your yard for all the reasons. And, you know, to have this pit bull go running off is fucking crazy. Anyway, so that's my pit bull thing. Okay, so I'm going through the comments here. Somebody wrote, Paul, actually the best rapper is Payday Monsanto. He's a lyrical genius walking people up through their truth music. I highly recommend you YouTube song Plastic Patriot by Payday Monsanto. It's hard for me to listen. I went and looked at this. It's hard for me to listen because, you know, the things that make rap music good are the whatever they call it, the beat, the hook, you know, the music that they play. And Chris Webby's like, I mean, that's what Kanye's a genius at, right? Whatever they call that thing where, you know, like he would have these beats, you know, there has to be a beat. That's why Kanye was such a, you know, whatever he did, in terms of his, like that, whatever that song was, like first, you know, I thought Kanye was always just a goof. I never really listened to his music. But somehow I ended up listening to it. It was just when my wife and I met for the first time. She flew out to see me and my kids. And I was playing some of the music, and I think he's actually kind of like a genius. There was that song, Runaway, and he uses like a few single notes on a piano to create the beat, and it's, you know, I mean, and it's a great lyrical song as well. And then there's the ability of the rapper to, you know, make the thing. I mean, it's just the cadence and the flow of the way that they rap to the beat, you know. And some things just don't appeal to me. That's why I don't like Tom McDonald, and I don't like this guy either. I looked at a few of his songs. He might have great lyrics, but I can't get through the song. But anyways, White House Gong Show reminded me of the movie Escape from New York, when bad guys rule the prison, same kind of thing. You know, I think that's legitimate. You know, the guy who made Escape from New York also made whatever that, you know, that really great truther movie, They Live. Is that Carpenter? He made a lot of good movies. They're kind of cheesy, some of them, but anyways, you know, I think we're heading in that direction where they're just going to wall off the cities. And there'll be places where rich people live, and there'll be You know, when they had that movie World War Z, which was connected to the UN. You know, it was a like sort of a UN pro-Israel, somehow both pro-UN and pro-Israel, right? Which they don't like each other. But called World War Z, and there was the Rebs. You know, that would be like the truthers. There was the zombies, and then there was the regular people. And the Rebs were considered worse than the zombies in the book. The Rebs didn't show up in the movie, but that's how the original. It was like a short little book, like it was, something that, was indoctrination type shit, right? So somebody wrote Happy Father's Day to me. I'm just looking through there, and that reminded me, I wanted to say this at the beginning, but it wasn't really appropriate for the stuff I was saying. So it was Father's Day yesterday, and, we never really celebrated Father's Day, and my ex did not make a big deal about it because she sucked. And, Mother's Day was a bigger thing, but I don't like those days anyway because, if you're a real traditional mom, you do so much. Like, if you're a whatever it is. And, like kids don't appreciate shit, but it's like one day where they're supposed to express gratitude where they should do it every day, right? And I don't believe in special days. Like, your birthday is a great day spiritually. It's a good measuring point, for your life. And if you look at it as a day to like meditate and do spiritual things, the Sajmark system's so great at celebrating the master's birthday through meditation and communion and, with the divine, and not making it about gifts and, celebration. I mean, some of the celebrations in India are so over the top. We were in Sri Lanka to renew our visas, and they had a celebration where like everyone just gives away ice cream. Like all the stores just give away ice cream. You walk from store to store. There's different holidays, and most of them. I mean, when gifts are involved, it's so much pressure on you, and if you find a really good gift to give somebody, sure, and but like it just, I don't really love the days. And Father's Day, but we didn't really celebrate, and I don't think my kids ever really appreciated the things that that they, I mean, even if I told them, they wouldn't get it. What I endured for them with my ex, but. None of them wished me a happy Father's Day, usually. So, and then that continued on. Now, nobody except my wife wished me a happy Father's Day yesterday, but I didn't care about it because it's not something I was even aware of. Like I knew it was Father's Day because I started my video that way, and then it left my mind. But it's kind of fucked up, right? Because I mean, I thought about it, like, well, yeah, that's pretty fucked up. But my family was so important to me, the intergenerational family farm, all that bullshit. It didn't work out, but it's just there's just no relationship there. Somebody wrote this. I'm a first responder. We use Valsalva maneuver for cardiac dysthemias. This is a fucking dyslexic nightmare word. Dysrhythmias. I don't know. Rapid heart rates, accelerated arterial fibrillations, and supraventricular tachycardia. And then the person wrote, also look into magnesium potassium deficiency, very common in cardiac dysrhythmias. Sometimes is an electrolyte imbalance. I worked also as a cardiac telemetry technician in a cardiology department. Yeah, this would be good comment on my other video. I'll take a photo of this and maybe I'll post a little thing on that channel. So my wife found this magnesium. She must have found a thread on Reddit or something. And this woman said that she took this magnesium. She would take it with a little bit of water. It tastes horrible. And she'd, rinse her mouth out with it, get it under her tongue. And she would take like a bunch of it. And it would stop the whole thing. I've been taking that magnesium regularly. And I've, always take magnesium. And, that magnesium is something that, I think I'm taking the right one because this was whatever it was. But I had, 3 or 4 different magnesiums here. One that's for migraine headaches and, and I take all those things, fairly regularly. I took one before bed. I'm not taking that as much because I'm taking these drops. And also I've been taking a ton of electrolytes because, and last night I ate like half a banana. So like there's potassium in the electrolytes as well. But, so yeah, none of that applied to my thing that happened last night. But of course my thing wasn't as bad either. So I don't know. But I took a bunch of the magnesium last night after it started. I just take some of it every day, and I take these drinks where I mix these drops in that I have tinctures and some powders. I take beet powder because that's good for the heart and all this stuff. But it's definitely reduced. I'm happy with the whole thing there, but maybe not as good. The nervous system stuff I have is like there's stuff. The magnesium's good for the firing of the electricity through your heart or whatever it is, the heartbeats. And then there's again, I'm not recommending anything here, but this is what I've learned: hawthorn berry, whatever's hawthorn root. So I have that and these things, and I take various other like motherwort tea and a bunch of other shit. The bloating. It's like I got to figure out the bloating. I got different kinds of. I take I eat a lot of probiotics, and the bloating is pretty much gone, except for the days that this thing happens, and I don't know what's up. I've lost the weight, all this stuff. Anyway, so there's another clip from that interview Tucker Carlson did with those two kids, younger people, and he said at some point, because I'm seeing the memes for it, that Tucker Carlson is saying he's not supporting the Republican Party. When he said Thomas Massey lost, that voting was no, that means voting doesn't mean anything, but now they're pushing Thomas Massey for president. But, you have to come to terms with it. And I don't know how sincere he is or any of these people. He's obviously got conflict of interest and CIA connections, all that shit. But, all these people, you don't know. Like, people have their part of them. Like Trump has a little bit of a truther in him. Like 10%. Like, legitimate. Not a lot of it's manipulation and, those things, but people who are a little bit interested in alternative narratives and people who want to seek truth and, whatever. But very few people are 100% truther. For that, you have to be a real spiritual person. Like, I'm not 100%. No one, like some part of me wants the system to keep on plugging away, even though I know it should go. Like, it'd be better for me in the future and you, all of us, and our future. The sooner it dies, the better. The less damage it'll do. Like, the longer it goes, the more damage that's going to be done. And so, we should all be hoping and praying that the system dies sooner. And there's, even the most spiritual people still struggle with material connections and things and, addictions or whatever. So it's hard for people to just do God's bidding no matter what. Like, it takes a very disciplined soul, to not be prejudiced in one way or another and want things for themselves. They don't want, everybody else can suffer, but, like this kind of thing, or their families or whatever it might be. But, it's there for everyone to see that there's no solution to this problem. The system itself is demonic. And I've talked about this, so much. Anyway, it's a good time to wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing for the apocalypse. And the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.